mtu hesabie. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Coming live from ICJ Kenya Studios. My name is Vincent Kimathi. I'm co-moderating this session with my colleague Silas Kamanza. I would want to request us all to take a moment of silence to mourn the passing of Senior Counsel Evans Monare, who will be remembered for his contribution to the jurisprudence of this country and the legal fraternity, and in Kenya and both in Africa. Please let's take a moment. Okay, thank you very much for that. As we know, one of the most critical ways citizens influence the decision-making of any government is through voting. Voting is a right that has been embedded and enshrined in our Constitution of Kenya. And also not only in the Constitution of Kenya, it is also embedded in the regional instruments and international policy.
Now, agreeably, the people's confidence in the value of and quality of their vote is principally reliant on the security and the resilience of the infrastructure that actually makes elections possible. As agreed, and as all of us know, therefore, security really becomes a very critical component in ensuring free and fair elections. Now, we all remember in Kenya in 2017, we saw different reports from organizations, including the Election Observation Group, the Kura Yangu Sauti Yangu group, where Kenya was involved, and also reports from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, and titled "Still a Mirage at Dusk." And all these reports mentioned the fact that there was a bit of violence in some particular areas of the country, especially meted against vulnerable groups, particularly women voters, women candidates, and the youth. Agreeably, and when you look at this, the opaqueness of political finances practices continue to elicit relationships between perpetrators and public officials, which result in compromised elections, governance, and insecurity.
In the recent past, we've seen in Africa where most countries' elections have been marred by irregularities and intimidation. As a result, police agencies or security agencies have been deployed to enforce law. However, contrary to the expectation, we've had reports, or we've seen reports where police officers have been accused of intimidating citizens and being not neutral.
And therefore, indeed, elections set the most difficult challenges in the work of the police, and form a test case regarding governments and police institutions' commitment to upholding democratic values. Of course, we all understand with all these challenges, we require there's a very delicate balance between exercising and advancing democratic values and upholding human rights standards and maintaining secure and safe societies. And it is upon this background that we here at ICJ wanted to really host this discussion to help us unpack this particular issue. And we are joined today by our distinguished panel of jurists and legal practitioners across Kenya and in Africa. Today, we are joined with the chairperson of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, Commissioner Makori. We are joined by Commissioner Dominic Kisavi from the National Police Service. We are joined by the Secretary of the Judiciary Committee of Elections, Honorable Zipporah Gichana. We are joined by the Zimbabwe Country Director from the National Democratic Institute, Mr. Arnold Tsunga, and Mr. Lucas Kimanthi, the Human Rights Officer at the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. Over to you. Before I allow Vincent to come in, just to remind our participants and panelists to engage us on our social media platforms at ICJ Kenya, IPOA, JCE, NPS, NDI, Zimbabwe, Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, and hashtag elections 2022, hashtag credible elections KE, and hashtag elections integrity. To kick off our program, allow me to hand over this session to my colleague, Vincent. Over to you, Vincent.
Thank you, Silas. Just to set us off for today, I would like to give our panelists today at least a minute for just to give us a statement on their thinking. What is the opinion on elections and security in Africa? I will start with Mr. Arnold Tsunga.
Thank you, my brother. So yeah, very quickly, let me start by thanking ICJ Kenya for creating this opportunity for dialogue on such an important matter. And then the second thing is just to acknowledge the African Union, as well as basically an international principle that the will, the authority to govern is derived from the will of the people that is freely exercised in a free and fair election. So freeness and fairness of election is central to legitimacy of leadership that emerges out of that election. And so when violence and electoral malpractices interfere with the ability of the people to choose their leaders, it really creates significant instability and lack of interest by citizens in participating in elections. So I think violence is both a driver of our lack of participation, but at the same time, it's a barrier to effective citizens' participation and therefore to accountable governance. So I would really urge that all African countries, as they go through elections, in order to underscore the importance of leadership emerging as a result of the free expression of the people's will, that we should do everything within our powers to avoid violence and malpractices that instill fear and lack of interest and confidence in electoral practices. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Arnold. I will invite Mr. Lucas Kimanthi. Please, Lucas, just take a minute to tell us something on elections and security in Africa.
Thank you very much. I would say that in the broader discussion on elections and security in Africa and all over the world, that security is a very critical element, in that as much as we would want to secure the process in terms of the voting process and all that, and also secure the integrity of the vote, then the broader aspects of securing the process from pre-election to the polling process and the post-election scenarios becomes very important. And therefore, then I can only just overemphasize the importance of security in electoral processes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucas, for that enlightenment. I would like to invite Commissioner of Police, Mr. Dominic Kisavi.
Okay, thank you very much. My opening comments on security and election in Africa is that I know as a police officer, security plays a critical role in ensuring free and fair elections in any country in Africa. However, these processes have been, violence has been a very serious impediment of these processes. And you have seen it happen in Kenya and other African countries. And I wish every Kenyan of goodwill can come together and join police service, national police service, as we prepare to ensure that we have free and fair elections in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Next, I will invite Honorable Zipporah Gichana. Zipporah? Zipporah, please unmute.
Thank you so much, my brother from ICJ Kenya. Good morning, my fellow panelists. I'm happy to be part of this discussion because it is key to the exercise we intend to undertake within the next 9 months or so. Issues of security during elections, after elections, and before elections are a key driver in ensuring that democracy actually thrives. We have seen and we have had to deal with a lot of voter apathy. Part of it is the experiences that Kenya and other countries around Africa have had that relate to security and insecurity immediately before or after elections. And therefore, it is very necessary for us as a country to have this discussion and see how we are going to ensure that for an exercise that we spend so much money on, we secure the integrity of the vote, we reduce voter apathy, and we ensure that democracy is enhanced all around. Those are my initial thoughts. As we go on with the discussion, we continue to share. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable. Next, I will invite Commissioner Han Makori from IPOA. Commissioner. Commissioner, please unmute.
Sorry, I was muted. Sorry. Sorry. Thank you very much, Vincent and ICJ for organizing for this discourse. It's important as we get towards 2022 elections that we hold open discussions on these issues of security and elections. Elections and the electioneering period is generally a very emotive and competitive process. And therefore security is critical to citizen participation. Citizens need to be assured of security. Citizens need to be assured of their safety so that they can come out to exercise their democratic process. And therefore the need for security and elections cannot be understated. It's a critical ingredient to free and fair participation in the democratic process of deciding who our leaders should be. And therefore, we are happy to participate in this discussion today. Thank you, ICJ, for organizing this.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And just to continue with the conversation, maybe I would like to hear from you. Now that you represent the commission, the authority, that is the IPOA, please just speak to us on the preparations of IPOA gearing to the elections. Commissioner, please remember to unmute. Thank you.
Sorry, I hadn't realized that I actually muted. Thank you very much once again, Vincent. I'll try to keep my comments more closely related to the questions that ICJ shared, so that maybe if there are any other areas to engage in, we can do that as we progress. I'll start by stating the role of IPOA in election monitoring. Under Section 6 of the IPOA Act, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority is mandated to monitor and investigate policing operations affecting members of the public. That's where we start. And therefore, guided by this act, it's Act number 35 of 2011, the Independent Policing Authority therefore monitors police operations around elections. So our involvement, I would say, as an authority is because security forces, particularly the members of the National Police Service, who are very critical and actually responsible for ensuring the safety of the citizens, are involved around that process, that critical period, to ensure that civilians can exercise their democratic right in a safe environment. And therefore, because of the involvement of the members of the National Police Service, therefore, IPOA then is called upon through its constitutive act to monitor the policing operations. And this includes before, as we speak of preparedness, during the elections, and even after, the period immediately after the elections, we monitor to see how things are managed. And this does not only apply to the general elections, it also applies to any by-election that takes place in this country. And therefore, such monitoring operations are in line with the objectives of IPOA as provided for under Article 244 to hold police to account and to work with the service to ensure that they remain focused on ensuring the service is professionalized, that in the performance of their duty, they remain accountable and transparent, and that as they offer citizen-centric service, they are cognizant of the need to observe human rights and fundamental freedoms. And therefore, the significance of IPOA in elections is to monitor how policing is done in relation to members of public, so as to guarantee credible elections. And therefore, the authority, therefore, we wish to affirm that we do engage in early preparedness, and we do this through intelligence-led policing and equipping all the deployed officers. We ensure we deploy officers in the venues as necessary towards strengthened policing of elections. And therefore, that's how IPOA comes into monitoring the elections, because of the involvement of the members of the National Police Service. As we have all noted that elections and security are inseparable. And therefore now I go to the questions. That was as a way of a preamble. So how does IPOA intend to ensure quick responses and investigations of security officers who have violated human rights? As IPOA, we have ensured that our rapid response investigations team is well prepared so as to quickly respond to any incidences that may arise, be they of nature of alleged brutality or serious injury or any deaths that may arise, so that we can then swiftly respond to any issues. We have in place a well-equipped rapid response team. We also ensure continuous environmental scanning through media and online platforms, so as to just ensure that we flag areas of concerns for area engagement and in case of any need for investigations. During this period, during the period of electioneering, we prioritize cases of electioneering incidences. We handle them as a priority, so that our rapid response team is able to quickly, move in and attend to them to just ensure securing of evidence, so that should there be any culpability, then it becomes easier to arrive at such well-supported conclusion. As IPOA, we have been gradually increasing the numbers of our investigations team. If you look at the numbers as they were in 2017, and today, I think we have more than doubled that team to just ensure strengthening of internal capacities in terms of numbers, in terms of skilled officers, so that as we move on, then we can be more responsive to the needs of the citizens. And also just marshalling all our internal capacities during this period, and also work in cooperation and collaboration with all stakeholders, particularly the civil society and human rights defenders, with a grassroots presence, based at the region, for quick identification and reporting of incidences, mobilization of witnesses, and so on and so forth. So basically, those are some of the measures we've undertaken. And what measures is IPOA putting in place towards elections? As we look forward to elections in 2022, we've already started monitoring the trends. You can already see we are operating in a heightened political environment. We've started seeing incidences here and there, and therefore we are just ensuring that we monitor the trends, we do continuous monitoring, and also how the police are getting involved to just ensure that the situation is under control. So we are continuously doing monitoring of the police operations so that we can identify the trading, the emerging trends, and therefore we can engage a security sector as we head towards 2022. We've also put extra effort in training our staff, basically ensuring we do capacity building for our technical staffs. And this we do both in-house and use of expert capability from elsewhere. As a board, we've participated and we appreciate that presently, because of cooperation and collaboration, IPOA is being given space to participate in the training of the police officers. Right from the board level to technical levels. Personally, I've been able to train a number of officers, mainly in the management category of officers, from inspectors and above. But our technical teams have also participated in training other cadres. And basically the purpose of these trainings is to just engage with the service on the need to observe human rights, fundamental freedoms as stipulated under the Bill of Rights, especially Articles 37, 38, 238, 239, and the article that gives our existence, that's Article 244 of the Constitution. We are also trying to ensure follow-up on implementation of policy recommendations made to NPS, and these are many. If there'll be time, maybe as we discuss, we can look at some of the recommendations that we've made, that some of them, if implemented, have far-reaching consequences that would be beneficial to this nation. Because the implementation of these then would trigger more efficient citizen-centric police operations, and more particularly around the electioneering period. We are also mapping out the country into manageable monitoring zones. We have now gone into regions. This is new, it was not there in 2017. We are currently in 8 regions, and we are seeking support to see if we can get to every county so that we can have presence in every county, particularly through the Huduma Center approach, where we can have officers sitting in every county through Huduma Center arrangement. And also doing awareness creation, outreach through various mechanisms. We have since established a call center, we have regional hotlines, and basically other campaigns on public order management and the use of force. On the question on how does IPOA plan to strengthen its communication to the public, especially the feedback process and restoration of people's confidence, one of the approaches that we've put in place is establishment of a call center. We were able to do this last year. We've tested it, it's working. We've been able to receive complaints from areas never before reached by IPOA. It's a toll-free number, 1559. Currently, it operates on a 12-hour arrangement, and we are trying to equip it so that we can do a 24-hour call center, able to receive complaints and provide feedback on a 24-hour arrangement. We are also expanding sensitization campaigns through traditional and digital media on policing rights and in collaboration with donors. We are in the process actually of engaging with donors so that we can do more outreach, more education. And we've also tried to use the barazas that are normally done by the county commissioners. We've sent officers, we've been sending officers to those barazas to just ensure that we do public education. Enhance physical outreach campaigns throughout the country. And we've also gone around the country engaging the members of the service whenever we've had this opportunity, and we plan to do more of that, as well as members of the public. And then periodic reporting on our mandate. We've engaging the media. We are trying to remain more accountable, to remain more present, so that the members of the public can know they have a place where they can bring their complaints. I think those basically were the questions. But as a matter of general observation, allow me to add this, that I think Kenyans are more aware, and we all have a responsibility to create more awareness on civilians' rights. They need to know they have their human rights, they have fundamental freedoms that need to be safeguarded. Even in law enforcement, there are circumstances where, yes, we agree the members of the service are allowed to use force. Those circumstances are clearly stated in law. And what you're trying to do is do more public education so that they also know how to be responsible citizens and to ensure they operate within the parameters of the legal expectations. We've seen complaints have been increasing over time. In 2012, 2013, when IPOA was young, of course, we expect when it's young, it's not very well known. We received 594 complaints. But what is of significance is that the current year, and it's not even over, 2020, 2021, we've received 3,583 complaints. That's the highest we've ever recorded. Recently, we've seen, political rallies that are a bit emotive, and the people are getting a bit emotional. So it calls upon all of us to just remain vigilant so that we can be responsive, be proactive, and try to ensure that our people are well prepared. And should there be then any incidences of any abuse of human rights or fundamental freedoms, then as IPOA, we commit to undertake the necessary independent and impartial investigations. And any officer found culpable, obviously, then we shall make the necessary recommendations to the relevant authority, including, but not limited to, if there is need for prosecution. We would hope to avoid such, and that's why we are trying to engage the service and other players within the security sector, so that altogether then we can be well prepared to confront 2022 in a manner that allows our citizens to exercise their democratic right in a free and fair environment. Thank you. I think I've spoken a lot. I remain available to engage in further discourse. As we look at some of the recommendations that we've made, what we would want to see, and hopefully that we can see, I've seen NPS is represented. So if there are any that have not been implemented, maybe they can take them up and ensure they're implemented before we hit the peak of the campaigns. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, panelists, for giving us your initial thoughts earlier on, and for Commissioner to give a presentation. We are seeing questions coming in from our participants. One of the questions that has been asked to Commissioner is issues to do with the recommendations that you had given to NPS, asking, what are some of the recommendations that you gave to NPS, and have they actually been taken up? So some of the very good conversations coming up that we want to see Commissioner Kisavi maybe answering or shedding a bit more light on some of this. But as we go on, allow me to kick off this to go on with the conversation. We'll give a chance to Commissioner Makori to answer some of those questions, and Commissioner Kisavi also to pick up some of the questions from the panel, from the participants. Now, we all understand the role that the judiciary plays in terms of electoral dispute resolution, and understanding that that role is very important, particularly as provided in Article 159 of the Constitution, and as well as ensuring a free and fair elections is actually held in jurisdictions. Now, with us today, we have Honorable Zipporah Gichana, who is, as I'd said, is the Secretary of the Judiciary Committee on Elections, which predominantly is responsible for preparing the judiciary to handle election petitions and cases on elections during elections. Honorable Zipporah Gichana, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Kimanthi, I'm present. I'm following.
Great to hear your voice. Karibu sana. We would like to start off to go on with this conversation, beginning with you shedding more light on some of the challenges that judicial officers face in terms of security, normally during your day-to-day jobs, and particularly during elections. So over to you, Honorable Zipporah. Tell us. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kimanthi, my fellow panelists, and of course our viewers. It is because of you that we're here. Maybe I can give a brief background to the Judiciary Committee on Elections. First of all, I want to applaud the CJ, the Honorable Lady Justice Martha Koome, because it is this committee is her creation. It was reconstituted sometimes late last year. Mid this year. And our chair, and it's right now currently chaired by Honorable Justice Mohammed Ibrahim, who's a Supreme Court Justice. The mandate that has been given to this committee is to advise the judiciary on the administrative arrangements and measures for efficient disposal of election-related disputes. Now, this is in recognition of where we came from. Remember when in 2007, when some members who are disgruntled by the election results said that they had no faith in the judiciary and its ability to resolve matters impartially. It is from that recognition of the demands of our people that the Honorable Chief Justice then set the first Judiciary Working Committee on Elections Preparations. They were in May 2012. So you've had a lot of institutional experience as a committee, and later this committee now morphed to be a standing committee known as the Judiciary Committee on Elections. We've had a lot of experience under this committee. We have seen 2 elections carried on, and the election dispute resolutions that have been done very, very well, because we have seen the numbers grow from 189 in 2013 to 389 election-related disputes. And all these were concluded within the time parameters that are given to us by the Constitution, within 6 months. So I wish to speak on the issues that I've been asked to, and that is the security challenges that are faced by the judicial officers and judges in matters relating to election dispute resolution. I'd like to say that security is a live issue. Security issues are live issues, not just during elections for judicial officers and judges, but also at any other time. More so during elections, these threats take form, morph out into actual attacks against the judiciary installations, against judicial officers and judges, and even against the safety of electoral materials. Remember, as a judiciary, we do receive election materials in the form of evidentiary documents. And so matters of keeping these documents safe and secure at that time are within our purview. So we have seen intimidation, threats, and even in some instances, violent attacks. I remember the incidents that we had in 2017, where the Honorable Lady Justice Philomena Mwilu's the driver, or was it a guard, was actually shot at and injured. And this came closely after the decision of the Supreme Court that we are going to have a presidential election rerun. So as much as we may want to say we are not sure whether that was the intention, but whatever the intention was, the attack was there and it was free, and we can all make conclusions based on what we saw. We also had previously, again in 2008, during the election, while conducting an election petition in Kisii, one of our judges, Justice Musinga, also faced threats. And this continues to be. And even when we don't mention it here, this is still a live issue for all judicial officers, judicial staff, and judges, wherever they are. So the threats, as I've stated, are not just threats. At times they come in the form of violent attacks. We have had rhetoric, political rhetoric, which also galvanizes and people who are not of the right thinking into attacking judges, judicial officers, judicial staff. So I continue to request that for our political class, the rhetorics might be made in jest, but unfortunately at times they take a life of their own. They often incite political supporters to harm or to make further threats, either against the judges or their significant other persons around them. This unfortunately does not bode well for the independence of judiciary. And we all know that for us to be able to achieve what we intend to achieve as a country, it is important that we have an independent and judiciary that is able to assert the rights of its citizens. We've also seen trolling and unwarranted attacks on social media. They often take an angle that is a sexual, gender-based violence angle, because at times they are directed at our lady judges, lady judicial officers, lady staff members, and even the men. But you see attacks that take an angle that is a very, very clearly sexual. We have had cases of stalking and surveillance on judicial officers, unwarranted surveillance on judicial officers, judges, on their persons, in their homes, in courts. All these unfortunately hamper the independence of judiciary. There are also other forms of attacks which are food for discussion. We have had cases of where you hear parties have been seen around courts with charms, chanting things, living a paraphernalia of witchcraft. And as much as maybe we are not very sure, I mean, maybe these threats do not mount to much through the protection of God, that is still intended to work at intimidating and further eroding eroding judicial independence. So that said, we will have discussions on how these threats can be neutered. The next question that I wish to tackle is how, in terms of technology, the level of preparation the Judiciary Committee on Elections doing to ensure that in the run-up of the 2022 elections, the institution is ready. The Judiciary Committee on Elections is working towards an adoption of a hybrid system. As it were, we have already embraced technology. You all know that courts are now live. After the COVID-19 disruptions, many of government offices had to be closed. And when judiciary reopened, we realized that it was not possible to continue with business as usual. And quickly we ran to technology, and we have had a very steep learning curve, but I can assure you that we have been doing well. We have received information from our stakeholders. And recently we also got lauded by the UNDP as one of the best examples of how judiciary has embraced technology in conducting matters. Of course, it is still a learning process, as I've said, and there are still issues that we need to address as not just as a judiciary, not just as a committee, but also as a judiciary, with the assistance, of course, of our stakeholders, feedback, and support from development partners. We'll continue to enhance and improve on the gains we have already made. Now we already have for the courts in Nairobi, we have e-filing, the e-filing system. So as far as election matters, election-related disputes go, all matters that will be filed within Nairobi and adjoining courts have to be filed online through the e-filing system. Countrywide, we have the case management system, in the sense that internally we are able to track every matter that is filed in all our courts, and we're able to tell what is the next expected action on that file through the case management system. I've already underscored that we have the virtual courts. Every court now within Kenya is live, of course, subject to the interruptions that technology is often associated with: power failure, failure of network connectivity, and many others. So in recognizing this, in recognizing the necessity of finalizing the EDR matters within the 6 months, the Judiciary Committee on Election is working to ensure that this system is rolled out all through, especially for the e-filing system. Of course, we'll have a backup of the manual process because we realize the sensitivity of election disputes. JCE will also incorporate the use of technology in training of judicial officer, judges, judicial staff, as well as encouraging our stakeholders to keep abreast with what is happening. Remember, the judiciary, the dispute resolution involves many actors in the justice chain: the police, the litigants, their advocates, parties, witnesses, and of course, these big matters of national importance. I know also the general citizenry would like to know what is happening. So in ensuring that all parties, this process is a success, we'll keep encouraging our stakeholders to also embrace technology that judiciary has already tried to put in place. We need to acquire, and we have already started acquisition of the requisite technological devices through the office of the Lady Chief Justice, Honorable Honorable Martha Koome, forgive me. She has ensured that most of our officers, if not all, have been kitted out with a working laptop. The court registries are abreast with what is happening. And in ensuring that the registries and registry personnel are also able to log on. Even so, we are very much aware of the digital divide. Technology is still a challenge due to lack of access to the internet, as I've already stated, lack of reliable power supply, prohibitive costs of these devices, both software and hardware. Like now, when we talk of ensuring that we have e-filing across the country, we are talking of enhancing the capacity of our servers to receive the avalanche of matters that we expect. And remember, these are heavy documents and they will be uploaded most likely at the same time. So we are working hard to ensure that that is done. When we talk of a judiciary, we also have the Political Parties Dispute Tribunal, which deals with party primaries. They have already spread their wings in some 8 regions or so, and they are working to ensure that they'll be more effective than they were last time, because last time they only had one registry here in Nairobi at the Milimani Law Courts. And so we are working hand in hand with the Political Parties Dispute Tribunal to ensure that they are also ready and ready to handle the matters that they'll be facing in a few months. How can our partners support us? We pray that all Kenyans realize that this country belongs to all of us. And recognizing that, is recognizing the value of the judicial arm of government. Without the three arms of government, then the government will be limping along. It is important that we respect the judiciary and its officers as part of government and enhance the respect for the institution of judiciary, because it's the sole arbiter of disputes as recognized by Article 159 of the Constitution. We also pray that we advocate and support the rule of law. It is the only way this country will be able to advance. We seek support from our friends and from other players within government that we make public the threats that are facing judicial officers, judges, where the situations warrant. And in criticizing the judiciary, healthy criticism is welcome. But in the same vein, please let us laud judicial integrity wherever we see it, so that we enhance public confidence in our institution. We request that we also get our partners, our stakeholders, the police, to monitor the security situation. I'm very happy from what I've heard from Commissioner Makori that they are enhancing their capacity to monitor the security situation. Remember, judicial officers are also part of the citizenry. And so if we can enhance it for everybody, then you can rest assured that even for judges and magistrates, for judicial staff, they will also benefit. But let us monitor it particularly for judiciary installations, for judges. And we are happy because the president has already appointed the judicial police, who are now in the process of getting their work, getting their work running. With more funding, of course, we'll be able to train and offer support psychosocial in the psychosocial endeavors of judges and judicial officers, as well as staff, during, before, and after. Remember, these are high-stakes matters, and there's a lot of pressure that is attendant in the matters. So we need to train our officers on security awareness, debrief them after the election petitions, enhance the team spirit of the entire group, so support us, and also support our stakeholders, because nobody can work on their own. Wanavyosema wahenga, kidole kimoja hakivunji chawa. We also continue to seek support for the JCE and political parties dispute tribunal secretariat. The secretariat we have currently is rather thin, and we should do with the support of donors to enhance its capacity in terms of human resource, enhance its capacity in terms of resources, laptops, and basic things that we need to get our office able to monitor the EDR matters countrywide. We also continue to seek support for the funding of publication, provision equipment, public outreach. And also we seek support to fund the logistical operations of JCE in all EDR activities. I'm very glad that we're having this conversation, because all the parties here are very relevant in the matters that we're talking about. And thank you for the opportunity to advance this discussion. I'll still be available to take questions later on. Mr. Kimanthi.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Honorable Gichana, for those really insightful words from you. We have questions coming in from our panelists. Please remember to engage us on our social media platforms, on hashtag elections 2022, hashtag credible elections KE, and hashtag elections integrity. One of the questions, and someone is agreeing with you, Honorable Gichana, that indeed the judiciary needs to be dependent, especially during election period, and the perception to the public is very important. And I agree with you that one of the major challenges is that people refer to the judiciary as a third arm of government, and I think we need to start changing that narrative so that people can recognize the judiciary as an arm of government and rather than as a third arm of government. Thank you so much. I want to give a minute to you two, starting with Commissioner Anne Makori, to quickly answer just a question that was posed on this platform. A question asking on the recommendations that the NPS had given to the National Police Service, and maybe we will allow Vincent to take us through the presentation by Commissioner Dominic Kisavi. Over to you, Honorable Makori.
Thank you very much once again. There are many recommendations, but I'll just highlight a few of them. And it's because you're convinced for professional policing approaches to be entrenched. The authority have emphasized the following recommendations to NPS leadership, some of which were made way back in 2013 through monitoring report and have been re-emphasized through other reports. One of them is availability of deployment plans and operational orders around policing elections, and which should be shared amongst others with IPOA and other concerned actors for purposes of ensuring transparency and accountability as envisioned under Article 244 of the Constitution. And this would enhance transparency and accountability around elections, and failure to which then legal action should be taken to those who contravene. Why is that important? Because if deployment plans are worked on, without fail, and operation orders, I've seen somebody there who has raised an issue on sexual violence cases. What deployment plans and operation orders do is that they are able to help you understand which officers were deployed in a particular area during whatever period. So if an incident happens, then it's easier to narrow down to a few, as you try to investigate. And therefore that would also make those deployed there to know that if anything goes wrong in their area of operation, they will be called to account. And therefore then it would drive a different kind of behavior in terms of ensuring that they operate within the service standing orders and within the NPS Act and within the law. And then therefore it would reduce cases of actions that would otherwise be deemed unlawful, because then the officers deployed will know if anything goes here now, the list is available, will be known who are the people here. And therefore this would narrow down on us. And therefore it would be a way of ensuring that they operate within the confines of the law. I know we've seen lapses of this happening. We've tried to emphasize it during training. And I really do hope that as we prepare for elections, that this particular aspect is observed without fail. Then we would avoid some of the very acrimonious cases that some of which have dragged from the last elections. We are going into another election cycle, and some public interest cases have still remain outstanding. The other issue is transfers. We have tried to urge the leadership that any transfers done or deployment of officers during this electioneering period should take cognizance of regional, socio-political, topographical, and other contextual issues to avoid creating mistrust. We are a country that is very sensitive about one another, especially around electioneering period. So this deployment should take cognizance of this fact and ensure deployments and any transfers done do not create a situation of mistrust even before we go into elections. And this would be within and without, because mistrust can affect the service itself based on how the officers perceive their movements. and also members of the public affected by these movements, particularly around this electioneering period. There is need to be sensitive around these concerns that may trigger reactions that may not be necessary if handled differently. Some of the other recommendations was there an interruption?
No, just go on in a minute.
Yeah,
so that
we've
we
also
can...
made recommendations that the National Police Service Commission, NPSC, which is an independent commission like us, should spearhead the development of public order management policy. We know a lot of incidences that happen, either injuries or deaths arise out of public order management situations. So we have made recommendations that NPSC should spearhead the development of public order management policy. There should be a policy in place. I don't think we have one in place as yet. So with a view of informing particularly repeal of Public Order Act, Cap 56. And why do we say this? Because with this policy in place, then fulfillment of Article 37 and professionalization of policing of assemblies, demonstration, picketing, protests, presentation of petitions would be realized. That's the only way we can realize the provisions of Article 37 if policy is developed around this area. So the disorderliness and disorganization and the chaotic nature that was observed, on policing during elections then should be discouraged. And therefore, some of these recommendations are far-reaching. We've also made recommendations that the National Police Service should always apply intelligence-led policing, which calls for intensive proper planning, identification of crowd leaders, establishment of rapport with communities, particularly that one. Once you establish the crowd leaders and establish a rapport with the communities, then you are likely to approach the community differently, rather than where they feel that law enforcement is what did I say? Is intimidating. Yeah. If you engage the communities, then they would appreciate the role of law enforcement instead of viewing it as a form of intimidating them to behave in a particular way during elections. And with this approach of policing, then any tendencies that it might infringe on rights and fundamental freedom of others would be managed. Planning and intelligence-led policing, therefore, should guide policing practices. There are many others, but I thought let me share those ones. And if there is need for anybody to inquire on any other area, because you can't go through all of them, there are quite a number. But I think as we prepare for elections, those are critical, very critical indeed, and would help us probably see a different experience in the upcoming elections. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you so much, Commissioner. I can see very many questions coming in from Dr. Christopher asking, how do you handle your conflict with NPS? I think we'll give you a chance later on to answer some of these very critical questions being asked by our participants. But allow me to bring in Vincent Kimathi in to take us through the next session. Over to you, Vincent.
Okay, thank you very much, Silas, and thank you, Chairperson, for a very insightful presentation. And now I would like to introduce Commissioner Dominic Kisavi on behalf of the National Police Service. Maybe we would like to hear the preparedness of the National Police Service towards, as we are gearing towards the elections. And maybe we would also like to hear maybe him responding to some of the recommendations that have been sent to NPS by IPO. Karibu sana, Commissioner.
Thank you very much, Vincent. For one, I would like to appreciate the fact that you invited the National Police Service to participate in this webinar. I think as we are approaching the general elections, the role played by police officers, police as a service, cannot be underestimated. Security is key to any democratic process thrive in the country. And we know that we have a duty to ensure that the country remains as one, is safe throughout the electoral process, that is free during and after the general elections. What I'd like to say that as a service, we have been drawing a lot of lessons from previous operations during elections. I know we have made mistakes before. Lives have been lost in this country, which are not necessary. But this time around, I would say that we are well prepared. We are well prepared because we started preparing for 2022 general elections way back in the year 2020, that is last year. By that time, the Inspector General of National Police Service established a secretariat that was tasked to prepare for the elections in advance. This secretariat, I happen to be the one who is leading that secretariat. And one of the things that we decided to do is to identify areas where we have been weak, where we went wrong previously. And we said that we noticed some disconnect in the way we do things. So one of the things that we have done and we're doing currently, we decided to develop an election security manual for police commanders that will be used by all commanders right from the officer in charge of a police station to the top, going upwards. Why did we come up with this election manual? You know, if you go to the east of this country, way back from independence time, elections were being run by the provincial administration. The DCs were returning officers. But now, since the establishment of an independent body to oversee elections, everything changed. And we realized that from the start of the IBC, or even the ECK before, police became a punching bag for everybody, and we want to change this. And how we change this? We are changing this first through training. We are actually in the process of analyzing a training program for police officers as we move towards the general elections. The training program will cover wide areas, one, and very critical on public order management. We realize police have been accused of all manner of crimes during elections, apart from intimidation. Police have been accused of causing death of people during elections. Police have been accused of manhandling processions, meetings, and all that. We want to make sure that our officers are well trained and prepared to use non-lethal means to manage the public. Another thing that we are also focusing on this manual is community policing. We are going to use community policing to make sure that we endear ourselves to the public, the people we serve. We make sure that we partner with the public to create a secure and safe environment for voters in this country, and also secure their properties and lives of people. You notice that since last year, for the last 1 year now, all police commanders countrywide were tasked by the Inspector General to initiate dialogue between themselves and border operators. The reasons why we decided to initiate talks between ourselves and the border operators is because for some time now, border operators have been identified as a serious threat, not only during elections, but to security in general in the country. We have seen a situation whereby motorcycles have been used to commit robberies and committed all manner of crimes. During election period, we have seen border operators being misused by politicians to do their campaigns. And these are some of the things that we want to partner with them and make sure that they assist and support police operations. One, by providing us with key information so that we can ensure, as the chair of the IPOA said, we use intelligence-led policing, because we realize that we cannot get intelligence, and especially the right intelligence, if we are making enemies with the people we serve. We want to make sure that we work with these people. Also, in the training that we intend to have, we are focusing also to train officers from DCI and officers who man crime branches throughout the country to make sure that they are conversant with electoral offenses and they are able to understand how to preserve evidence, how to also collect evidence, and how to identify offenses within the Elections Offences Act, and prepare good cases that can stand test of time before our courts of law, and make sure that we obtain conviction. We know that courts cannot convict anybody if we don't prove our cases beyond reasonable doubt. And also in the training, we have also brought on board other stakeholders to assist us and support us in the training program. One of the people that were brought on board is the ODPP. We are also working closely with the NCIC on issues of hate speech and conflicts in most areas of the northeastern, upper eastern, and north rift. And as a service, we are also carrying out, actually we have been carrying out a regular threat analysis of the country. You know, serving this country and providing security in this country, in a country like Kenya, whereby campaigns start immediately after the final announcement of sorts of another election, you can understand how challenging it is. It brings along with it fatigue of the officers who serve this country. And we are meant to stay in a political mood for 5 years until the next elections. If you look at, and I wish there was somebody from IEBC, if you look at the current situation, politicians are traversing the country, campaigning for next elections. And yet, campaigns have not been declared. So we have to make sure that we balance our operations between covering those campaigns which are ongoing and also providing security to other Kenyans. And going forward, we are also partnering with the Judiciary. Actually, in the multi-agency committee, the technical committee on election security, we have Honorable Lillian Arika, who is a member of that committee. We work with her very closely. We also have officers from IEBC. We are working on that currently with them. And the money I'm talking about is actually, as we speak today, 90% complete. In 2 weeks' time, we'll be carrying out validation process throughout the country to make sure that we launch the manual by the end of November or before that time. Now, as a service, what are we doing to secure this country? We have put a lot of things in place. One of them is that we are putting proactive measures to make sure that we don't witness election violence as we have seen before. And I wish there was somebody from political circles, because most of the challenges that we have is incitement by politicians. This country, we have seen most politicians, although most of them, especially the serving politicians, the ones who are elected already, there are police officers behind them who offer them security. But they stand before Kenyans and incite Kenyans against the same police officers who provide security to them. So with the time, we have found that the differences between the police and the public are widening. And we want to bring that one to a stop by talking to the people, making sure that people understand what you do and why we are doing it. We want to make sure this time round, our officers will be providing backup during the elections, are well trained. They can be able to handle situations without necessarily using violence. But however, those officers will be found acting against the law. They will be dealt with. And I think IPO will agree with us. They'll be doing a good job in investigating officers who are conflict with the law, but we also do the same. Currently, we have over 300 officers who have been charged before court. That is both by IPOA and the National Police Service itself. And so as a service, we are ready to make sure that the country is safe. And we want to make sure that everybody will be safe to do their business, because we are planning to make sure that the infrastructure of the IEBC is secure throughout. And during the time of elections, we'll make sure that the ballot papers are safe. But there's something that I would like to my colleagues to understand. Apart from the other challenges or the other causes of conflicts during elections, also technology is a key element of insecurity during elections. If, for example, the IEBC does not get it right this time due to technological challenges and cybersecurity issues, we might have a lot of challenges, and this can trigger violence. Because apart from, even look at during the last elections, although people are using, IEBC was using technology to make people vote during the elections, still there was questions which were raised about the election technology. There were claims that their systems were hacked. And also another thing that we are doing is that we are monitoring social media, because there's a lot of hate speech. There's a lot of incitement in social media. And also in social media, we have a lot of fake news being circulated by bloggers and other people who are very active in social media. There's a lot of propaganda being circulated also in the social media. I've said the issue of border, we are talking to them throughout the country, and they have been cooperating late. We have another challenge that is coming up, and as we move towards elections, the issue of criminal gangs. We have armed youth who sometimes in some areas are being brought together to form militias in areas of northeastern, not actually in upper eastern and north. Some of the conflict that we are witnessing in those areas is not actually because of cattle rustling. These are people who are being funded by politicians, and they are being investigated. And we hope in due course and the shortest time possible, the perpetrators or people behind the funding of these youths will be arrested and prosecuted. And also, there's a lot of anxiety being placed, being shown by the people. In a country whereby the public take elections serious like Kenya, where the public have a lot of trust in the politicians, anxiety has been rising by day. So anything that can happen during that time, during the elections, can trigger violence in this country. But we are on guard. We want to make sure that anybody who's kind of breaking the law is investigated and action taken. Now, what we are doing to make sure that as we approach the elections, the country is safe, we are coordinating our operations with other stakeholders. We're also creating partnerships with other stakeholders to make sure that we are prepared and we are working together by the time Kenyans go to vote. I know there are some issues that have been raised about provision of some information. from police service. One of them being availing things like operation orders on deployment plans. I would like to say that operation orders are actually internal police documents. And if IPOA wants them, they can always talk to the IG. And if they are allowed, they'll be able, because operation orders is not, we don't have a national operation order. What we have prepared now and we are updating currently is a national security plan. That one we are preparing, and we have kept on updating the documents, and we will keep on updating until after the elections, and until, if there will be petitions, they are finalized. But operational orders are actually, because security is dynamic, are actually documents which are developed by commanders in the field. But however, if the IPOA means that they need some of those documents, they can always liaise with the IG. And if he allows, they'll be able to be made available to them. Although I insist, these are purely operational documents meant for use by police officers. And another thing that we are doing is that we are also in the final stages of releasing a training program. We'll be calling upon so many stakeholders to come on board and train with us, so that we make sure that our officers are well versed with the law and they will act within the law. So if there will be other questions in the course of the webinar, I'll be able to take them. For now, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner, for that insightful presentation. And yes, I agree with you. NPS plays a very critical role, especially in ensuring peace in this country. And now that we are moving towards elections, we play a very critical role. I'm just looking at the conversations on our platform. Maybe just to quickly read the question that maybe you respond to later. I see Stephanie Marigu said that since the 1991 multi-party elections, the electoral-related sexual violence cases have steadily increased. What are the risk factors that increase the electoral-related sexual violence and countering preventative measures being put in place by both IBC, NPS, and IPOA to deal with the same ahead of the 2022 general election? Maybe even Anne will respond to the question. And then the other question to Commissioner is, does the NIS have a role in this? Or maybe what he's trying to ask is, are they contributing to your strategy? Or are they on board with your plans as we are moving forward? And the other question was, someone wanted to know, what is NPS partnering with other key stakeholders, for example, IEBC, IPOA, and all other key stakeholders? Yeah, I think I will move to Silas. Commissioner, you respond to the questions during Q&A. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Maybe Silas, you can take over.
Thank you so much, Vincent. Moving on because of time, straight to Mr. Lucas Kimanthi, representing the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. We saw you after the 2017 election publishing a very, very good report on the elections that year, titled on elections, titled Still a Mirage at Dusk. Tell us from your experience, what your experience was. Tell us what what you saw during and what should be addressed before the 2022 elections. Over to you, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you, Silas. I would want to say that it was actually not one report for the 2017 elections, but actually 4. But I'll get into that later on. From our monitoring processes since I would say 2005 up to 2017, I would say that a number of things. very critical security concerns on the part of the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. And the first one is the issue of preparedness on the part of security personnel. And in terms of preparedness, I would look at issues to do with mapping, what we usually call the hotspots, so that when it comes now to the issues of deployment, then the police would know where they would need more numbers and where probably they will need clearer strategies to handle the issue of provision of security in the electoral processes. The other thing is in terms of preparedness, the psychosocial aspect of it, that when we go to monitor the campaigns, to monitor the polling process, to monitor the tally process, and we see police officers, security personnel, having many days, many working hours, and we look at the issue of have they been psychologically prepared for the task? Then the other thing is, of course, the issue of tooling, not necessarily, guns and batons and all that, but the issue of what exactly do they need to provide security in the electoral processes outside, their normal police operations. The other thing is the issue of chain of command. That as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, one of the things that we've noted in our 4 reports is the issue of where you note that it is not just the National Police Service providing security in the electoral process, but rather, there are also other auxiliary, personnel, KWS probably, National Youth Service, Kenya Forest Service Guards. And then as a commission, one of the things that we've been interrogating is the issue of while the National Police Service officers have been trained, to deal with, how prepared are these auxiliary, personnel in terms of, participating in the exercise? I think Chairperson IPOA has talked of crowd control management. And one of the things that are, a critical matter for us as a commission, the issue of, serious allegations of killings, extrajudicial killings and such, issues to do with torture, issues to do with manhandling of, campaigners, and their supporters and all that. And for us then, when like in total, in the 4 reports, we recorded 99 cases of alleged deaths, as a result of police actions. Sadly, 10 of them being children. And then therefore that for us is a critical issue based on our reports. The use of force and firearms, related to the issue of killings, deaths, serious bullet injuries and all that, then for us that's a critical issue that needs to be evaluated and discussed candidly as we prepare for the 2022 general elections. Of course, the issue of the gap between the police and the general population, that in terms of elections, should the citizens view the police as a critical player in the process, rather than an element that is coming to disrupt the process. And for us as a commission, we are very clear that is what is supposed to be. Lastly, the issue of sexual violence in relation to electoral processes. In our final report titled Silhouettes of Brutality, we recorded 201 cases of sexual and gender-based violence in relation to the electoral process. And you'll agree with me that the 201 cases is not exhaustive. That the 201 cases that we put in our report is only for cases that we could get tangible evidence, and we only focused on 13 counties. So you can imagine if we visited the 47 counties in this country, perhaps we could be talking of thousands or more, which is very, very sad. And I think on the chat, I'd seen a participant, posing a very serious question on the same, that yeah, indeed, since 1991, we used to hear actually cases of sexual, violence in relation to elections. Then, it advanced. Then all of a sudden in 2017, we were shocked. Actually, if you read our report, some of the narrations that we've included there, sound like, they're out of this world. Very serious issues. Initially, it would be our good ladies being attacked. Then in 2017, we recorded cases of, sodomy, defilement, and all that, which is very, very sad. Allow me to move and look at the issue of then. Now that the 6 issues that I've looked at, how can we, together with the stakeholders participating in this webinar and others, how can we work to ensure that as we prepare for 2022 and beyond 22, that the issues of security in terms of management of elections, would be better. One is, of course, we need an open door, policy sort of, an arrangement, so that the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights would feel free, to state that in our reports, in our recommendations, that this is what we found. So, National Police Service, how can we assist each other? IPOA, how can you bring us together? And so on and so forth. And then there are already some existing frameworks. How can we embark on the same? Leverage on what is existing instead of reinventing the wheel. The police working, a police reforms working group, and and others. Then the issue of training and retraining of our security personnel, and also even the general public. In 2017, together with IPOA, IMLU, and other actors, we prepared a short and very concrete short video on public, management in terms of, the right to assembly and such. And therefore, as we did that, small, I kept thinking myself, then this is good, for the general public, but who is thinking about the National Police Service officers? So that could there be a situation whereby, when it comes to deployment, that an officer is just asked, to prepare and then deployed to a certain region in this country, without proper preparation in terms of, I don't want to say skills, but the know-how in terms of the expected environment, the electoral environment. And therefore, for me, this is very, very critical. And I'm glad that the representative from the National Police Service said that they are inviting stakeholders, to participate and assist in their, training, sessions. And from our side as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, we offer ourselves for the same. Thirdly, stakeholders need, to come together and discuss critically the issue of, ADR. I like the presentation from Honorable Gichana, but I remember in 2017, even PPDT, was overwhelmed. All of us cannot keep on rushing to the courts. And we all know that much of the insecurity and much of the violence, is as a result of dissatisfaction by either candidates or their supporters. And therefore, then, how can we as stakeholders then assist the process by coming together and look at, a way of, addressing, this kind of dissatisfaction, from the candidates and their supporters, so that, we reduce the level of the tensions. And then lastly, allow me to talk about some of the challenges that we've seen in relation to security and elections. And the first one I would want to tackle is the issue of the welfare of the officers who are deployed to provide security in the electoral processes. That are issues to do with psychosocial support, issues to do with technology, issues to do with when these officers are deployed, to the various parts to provide that kind of service. Issues to do with feeding. We've seen when we go to the polling stations, the tallying centers, a police officer probably spending 3-4 nights in one station. So the welfare of these officers, so that we also stop that blanket contamination that would look at these officers as human beings who also have needs, so that they can, if those needs are provided, then they provide the service better. And of course, the other issue is the issue of, I've talked about deployment and chain of command, and I'm glad that Mr. Kisavi from NPS said that if it's about the deployment manuals and all that, they are accessible, and IPOA, can help us, access the same. And then I've talked about targeted training on elections management, so that all of us, when we get into this process, including the security personnel, should have not just rely on, the training which a police officer underwent in Kiganjo or any other place, that knowledge is adequate to provide that service in a charged environment, like, elections. And then lastly, one of the challenges that I think we need to candidly discuss as a country is the issue of accountability. You'll agree with me that anytime, we get into the elections, mood, it's like we drop, everything that, we don't even want to follow the rule of law. We forget about the rights of, citizens of this country. We forget about the rights of security personnel. We forget about, all manner of things. We get into a moment of frenzy, and then we keep on breaking the law. It is the high time that if we are to enhance security in terms of elections in this country, then the issue of impunity must be tackled. I think I would want to stop at that point. Then over to you, Vincent.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lucas Kimanthi, for that really elaborate presentation, giving us outlook to what happened in 2017 and drawing lessons from that experience in ahead of 2022 elections. I think with your presentation, all of us here have taken note of some of the things or recommendations or challenges that you have posed to us to pick up and work on. Allow me to bring in a very Arnold Tsunga, who is the country director of NDI, National Democratic Institute from Zimbabwe. And the hope is to have him, to just hear him out, his experiences and what happens down in the south of Africa. His experiences will really help us draw more lessons from our brothers and sisters ahead of the 2022 general elections. Karibu sana, Arnold Tsunga.
Thank you.
Yeah, to start off the conversation, Arnold, what are some of the experiences? What are some of the experiences, and what are some of the examples that you can highlight for us, having in mind that you have been monitoring the election process in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, and neighboring countries like Mozambique and Lesotho, Zambia as well. What can you tell us? What can you share with us, Arnold? Over to you.
Thanks a lot with the usual ritual. You can hear me? Yes?
Very well. Loud and clear.
Perfect. No, thank you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. And thanks again, once again, to ICJ Kenya for this important meeting. And certainly, I think it's very, very useful to continue looking at especially the impact of violence, the question of security as we approach elections, because it has a big say in terms of shaping the election outcomes in virtually all our countries in Africa. So violence, including state-sponsored violence, have been a feature of elections in many parts of Southern Africa as well. We've also seen weaponization of the legal and security systems that result in such characteristics as arbitrary arrests and detentions, as well as use of that to complement selective use of violence to influence electoral outcomes. Perceptions of lack of independence and integrity of the election management bodies has also exacerbated conflictual environments ahead of elections. A desire by political players to get into elections where they are certain of outcomes rather than being certain of procedures has also created a mentality and operating mode of power as an end in itself, and therefore at any cost. One of the propositions we always make is that elections in Africa need to be moving to a situation where there is certainty of process and uncertainty of outcome. And yet our political leaders generally across all political divides always look at elections with a view for certainty in outcomes rather than certainty in outcomes and uncertainty of procedure. And yet the uncertainty of processes is the thing that has really resulted in conflict, in suspicion, and in the failure of elections creating stability, especially after elections. And the operating context really has been that of power as an end in itself, and therefore at any cost. And when you then look at the role of the judiciary, which is what I've been asked to talk about a bit in terms of judiciary and legal processes and the question of security, you then see that there's formidable pressure on the judiciary and on the legal system to really depict the proper qualities of independence and impartiality that is needed to give confidence to the public and even to the election stakeholders that any electoral dispute resolution process that is done, whether before or during or after elections, is one that really enhances the credibility of the elections itself. So I'm going to look at a number of countries really just to give a very helicopter view of some of the practices that we have witnessed that really show the negative security environment in which the judiciary and the legal system has worked to try and contribute to enhancement of the integrity of electoral processes. So in Zimbabwe, I'm currently working, we have a history of the use of lethal force and means to deal with citizens as they try to enjoy fundamental rights as well as political rights that are provided for in the Constitution. And I can give examples. In 2008, we had close to about 300 people who were killed in what looked like widespread and systematic killings involving militias, security sector, and some military in order to influence elections in a way that then resulted in the opposition withdrawing from elections and President Mugabe then claiming victory. In 2018, on the 1st of August, one day after the elections, we found that 6 unarmed civilians were killed by armed soldiers following the elections. Citizens had expressed a desire for election results to be announced quickly. But then when they protested in the streets, the army was deployed in the central business district and they opened fire on unarmed civilians, killing 6 of them. Former President Motlanthe of South Africa, he had a commission of inquiry which he was chairing, making recommendations that the perpetrator soldiers needed to be brought to justice. But then up to now, they're still roaming the streets free. In 2005, we had more than 2 million people evicted in mass evictions in an operation that President Mugabe called Operation Murambatsvina. Murambatsvina is a Shona phrase for drive away the filth. So the operation was drive away the filth, which was essentially informal traders and informal settlements that were seen to have voted in a way that displaced the powers that be. And as a result, they were all driven out of their residences. There's one case that was also decided in 2005 where a former member of parliament, Roy Bennett is now late. He had obtained an order that he would be allowed to be nominated and contest elections whilst he's in prison. And so the president, then Mugabe, did not feel that the judiciary made a correct decision and said, that is madness. We cannot be held back by a man who is in prison. And then we also had a case where, as a lawyer in private practice myself, I represented a man called Shane Kidd and one current member of parliament called Museami. And I simply made a bail application for them in a place called Chipinge. And then immediately after the bail was granted and they were released, I learned as I was driving back to my place of operation that a demonstration had been organized and that the magistrate who had barricaded himself in his office was, the doors were forcibly broken into, and then he was abducted and flogged in the streets in a place called Chipinge, whilst being beaten for having granted bail to opposition activists, and he suffered 2 broken ribs. And then in terms of the failure to resolve election challenges in an environment which is highly contested, I know that in 2000, when elections were done and there was a perception that the opposition had succeeded, the opposition challenged in 40 constituencies, and not a single case was resolved in the 5 years that Parliament sat until it actually finished its sitting, and those cases were not judicially resolved, the judiciary being too weak and too scared to be involved. But then maybe the one thing that really showed the impact of very strong politicians on the independence and impartiality of the judiciary, including its structure and composition, was between 2000 and 2002, when the entire Supreme Court bench -1 and the entire High Court bench -1 or 2 were forced out of sitting as judges because demonstrations were orchestrated against them by the war veterans. And the then Minister of Justice, Patrick Changamasa, said that they were no longer politically correct. And so the moment they were forced out of office, it allowed for the superior courts to be pegged by judges who were then deemed to be politically correct. And maybe the final example I'll give there on Zimbabwe is a case where there's judgment today. It's called Gichana versus Nduna, where in 2018, Gichana won for the opposition an election in a place called Chegutu. But then in announcing the results, Nduna, who had lost the election, was announced as the winner. And so ZEC, which is the election management body, immediately said, now that we've announced the wrong results, our hands are tied, go to the courts. So when he went to court, Gichana, he lost in the courts on a technicality that he had used the wrong procedure. So it resulted in Nduna, the loser, being the person who is in parliament. And the case has been going backwards and forwards, and it is still in the courts up to now, where you have a judiciary that is unable to reaffirm the electoral verdict, and you now have the person who lost the election being the one in parliament, and the one who won the election being out of parliament. Let's go to Zambia. In Zambia, the election observation mission of the African Union noted that the 2021 general elections took place against a backdrop of a heightened political tension in the country that could be traced to the disputed elections of 2016, where post-election violence resulted in the arrest and detention of several opposition members. So the situation like in Zimbabwe was then compounded also by the abuse of the COVID-19 measures, lockdown measures, to use them to achieve political outcomes, and therefore to weaponize the legal system and pretend to be implementing lockdown measures when in fact it was targeted political action to try and give one of the parties a better competitive edge. But that situation and the fact that the election management body was seen by the African Union Observer Mission as not being very open and accountable resulted in tensions as we went into the 2021 elections. But thankfully, because of the parallel voter tabulation process by civil society, but also by the opposition that carried out an alternative observation process where the results were manifest, it meant that the election management body was unable to announce improper results, which was the fear that the opposition then, which is now the ruling party, had, that elections could be manipulated. So again, that's a good example there where you can see that a failure to have an open and accountable election management body cannot stop maybe elections from producing good results if the population is given enough civic space to effectively participate and engage with the electoral process. But one case I wanted to share on the Zambia is that there's a guy called Jefferson Chipepa Musonda, a policeman who resigned in 2018 in protests and publicly announced his resignation because the police stations had literally been taken over by cadres belonging to the ruling party. And he felt that he couldn't remain a policeman who would have the police force as part of the security architecture in the country used to target, opposition and to prevent free and effective participation of Zambians in electoral matters. And so predictably, he was charged under fabricated charges of desertion from the police force. And luckily for him, the election result has now produced a situation where the prosecutorial service has now gathered enough courage to say that the prosecution itself, they are not going to proceed with it. That shows the way in which the weaponization of the legal system, depending on the political environment, can also work. I will give an example of Malawi, where the court made a big difference in nullifying a presidential election. I think in Africa, they say this is the second nullification after the nullification in Kenya. But with Malawi, predictably, the president then, Mutharika, tried to then go after the judiciary and the chief justice by summarily forcing him to go on leave pending removal from the bench because they say his term had come to an end. So Malawi Law Society and the Human Rights Defenders Coalition filed a case to challenge Mutharika's effort to try and remove the Chief Justice from office as a result of the decisions that he had made or that the judiciary had made. So he was suffering vicariously because the judiciary had nullified the presidential election and ordered fresh elections. And then the Southern Africa Chief Justices Forum, which is a coalition, a voluntary association of Chief Justices from Eastern Southern Africa, had to do the extraordinary thing of writing to President Mutharika advising him not to carry out the continued threats against the Chief Justice and the judiciary. So let me come to Swaziland and maybe end at Eswatini. In Eswatini, the country seems to have now reached a tipping point, asking questions whether the absolute monarch is still needed or the governance architecture has to change to become a constitutional democracy. And this has been characterized by demonstrations that are sustained, which have been involved young people and the students. But then the soldiers have been deployed and they've been firing live ammunition against unarmed civilians to try and preserve the system of government where the monarch remains an absolute monarch. So 2 MPs have also been imprisoned and a third one escaped and currently his whereabouts are unknown. But again, that is a classical case where in a question of what is supposed to be democracy or electoral democracy, you see a heavy security response, including the use of COVID lockdown measures as the reason why the security forces are being deployed. But in any case, Eswatini has a history of interfering with judicial independence in matters involving the royalty. In 2011, the Chief Justice, late Tatara Modibedi, issued a practice directive directing all registered staff and all clerks of court to reject process where the king or his officials were being sued. I went with the Law Society of Swaziland to challenge this practice directive with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, and it was predictably declared to be a violation of the right to fair trial, as well as a failure by Swaziland to comply with this obligation to establish an independent and impartial tribunal in terms of Article 26 of the African Charter. And then a fiercely independent and impartial judge, Thomas Masuku, was removed from the bench when he issued a spoliation order against the king and his officials who had forcibly expropriated cattle from a commoner. And thankfully, despite being removed on the basis that he had insulted the king in his judgment, he was now offered an opportunity to continue practicing in Namibia. And then finally, to show the threats that the judiciaries face when they make decisions around questions of power. In Zimbabwe, when white farmers took the government to the SADC tribunal to challenge what they felt was discriminatory land appropriation exercise, they succeeded. But then the SADC tribunal was disbanded by the heads of state of the SADC on the basis that it had now become a danger to the supremacy and to the sovereignty of the apex courts within the region. That shows the extent to which judiciary can be affected when they speak to power. Thank you for listening. Back to you, Silas.
Thank you, Arnold. Very good comparative analysis there from across the region. Even us, I'm sure we recognize the experiences in Uganda in the last elections, and Tanzania. We've had just a national dialogue session a 2 months ago, where speakers talked about the experiences even in Tanzania and Uganda. Also to mention that ICJ Kenya has been handling a case on electoral violence, especially on SGBV, that happened in the 2007-2008 elections, which case is still in court. And we are looking forward to finalize that so that we can see reparations to victims. We also draw references from the Rwandan genocide, accepting the fact that, state machinery played a very great role in, in that particular process. This has been mentioned in numerous reports, but just to allow us to quickly go into a short session of plenary, we have Vincent here who will take us through that plenary session. We'll go overboard a bit overboard for a few minutes, so please bear with us as we finalize. But Vincent, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Silas, and thank you very much, our panelists, for that very resourceful presentations you made. We've been looking at our participants who have been asking questions directly to various panelists. I had seen Elizabeth Angila. She had raised her hand. Please, Elizabeth, are you still with us? Okay. Dr. Christopher. Okay. We as maybe our technical team looks at whether we still have Stephanie who addressed her hand. Maybe I'll read some of the questions that have been directed to the panelists. I'd read the question to Dominic and Makori from Stephanie Marigu. She had asked that since the 1991 multi-party elections, the electoral-related sexual violence cases have steadily increased. What are the risk factors that increase electoral-related sexual violence cases and the countering preventative measures being put in place by IEBC, NPS, and IPOA to deal with the same end of the 2020 general elections? Maybe my panelists, you can be noting the questions. Once I finish, I will ask each of you to respond to various questions. The next question I read it to Commissioner Kisavi on whether National Intelligence Service is involved in preparing the strategy, the election strategy that the NPS is preparing. The other question was from Damaris Onyancha to Dominic Kisavi. She was asking whether the election security manual is available for the public. And the other question was directed to Commissioner Kisavi, where someone asked what is the role of the CSO in the NPS election strategy, or does the National Police Service will the National Police Service engage CSO in their strategy? Then there was another question that was directed to Commissioner, the chairperson of IPOA. Someone wanted to know who checks IPOA, or who is the oversight authority to IPOA. I think for now, those are the questions. Maybe I can start with Commissioner Kisavi, because you have many questions. Maybe you can respond to some of the questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Vincent. On issues of gender-based violence, there has been a worrying trend in the rise of these cases in the country, let's say since multi-party elections started. But apart from investigating, and we know that we have investigated several cases of this nature, we have taken several people to court, but as a proactive measure, what you are doing is that with the support of development partners, we have established gender and children desks in most of the stations throughout the country. We have also recently started establishing what we are calling polycare centers in police stations. We started in Nairobi, and they are being rolled throughout the country. Okay, these polycare centers are manned by multi-agency partners. That is, it's a center whereby a victim will report, and they will find a medical officer who will attend to them also. All the processes will be done on site. There will also be an officer from IDPP who will be able to guide the officers on the investigation process. And these people will be, the perpetrators will be taken to court almost immediately if they are known people. On the issue of, and also apart from these public centers and gender desks which are being established, also training with the support of training partners or police officers on how to deal with these cases has been enhanced. We are trying to train as many officers as possible throughout the country. And also the cases of gender-based violence, they also be, these are issues which also been factored in our training curriculum in our training institution throughout the country. And the issue of the role of NIS in our strategies, I think the question I need to understand, one, NIS is the intelligence body of the government. We work with them through a multi-agency approach. We developed and accepted and started using a concept of multi-agency some years back, whereby all the key government agencies are represented. If the NIS, they provide intelligence backup, if it is relates to police work, they share with us any criminal intelligence that they think is going to support our work. So they don't work alone. We don't work alone either. We work with other stakeholders. About partnership, I said earlier on that we are partnering with key stakeholders to make sure that we have a safe environment for all. During this time when we are preparing for the elections, that is even by the time we start party primaries, you understand that there's a lot of anxiety about parties. People started moving from one party to another. We will make sure that even during the voting, all the voters are safe to cast their votes. We'll make sure that the IEBC officials are safe because we are working with them. There's a forum whereby we work together. I'm a member in some of these key committees, and other officers are also members in some other committees whereby we work with all stakeholders. About the election manual. The election manual, I said, the election manual, which is 90% complete, is a police document. It is meant to be a guide to all police commanders when they are preparing for elections, not even 2022, in the future also, after 2022. This manual is available to all police commanders, is not a public document. It is purely a police document to guide police commanders to do the right thing. And in the preparation of this manual, we have factors lessons learned. For example, there is a famous case of a very unfortunate case of the Pipendo, which took place. We are drawing a lot of lessons from that case, whereby the court castigated us for not following the 6th schedule of the National Police Service Act. And somebody also raised the issue of mapping. We are mapping the country, and this mapping is going to inform us on deployment. On the issue of psychosocial support, I would like to tell the panelists that the National Police Service has established a full directorate manned by counselors. Some of them are police officers, others are not police officers. They are offering psychosocial support to police officers who work under very strenuous or challenging situations to make sure that their welfare is well taken care of. Somebody raised the issue of, one of the panelists raised the issue about the auxiliary officers from other entities like KWS, KFS, NYS, and all that. And what you're doing is that in our training program, we are going to, the IG has undertaken to make sure that we get all these officers who will be deployed to support us to be trained with the officers, to make sure that by the time the elections take place, they will be as well prepared as police officers themselves. And another thing that I will, the issue of, I've said that we are taking consideration of the use of firearms. We are training officers to make sure that we use non-violent means to quell disturbances and all that. I would like to comment on the cases that will be raised about the cases, 99 cases, because I'm not privy to the information that we have. But also when the human rights bodies are investigating some of these cases, remember some of these crimes are perpetrated not only by police officers, but by members of public. I still remember clearly about the young 20-year-old girl who was gang raped by goods who were rushing to the airport to meet their party leader. Nobody mentions about that case. That lady later died. And what I would like to a parting shot to our partner IPOA. You are doing a very good job, but there's a lot of anxiety among police officers because the police officers are feeling that you have not covered all your mandates. You are not talking to the police officers. Please kindly, it's a program that was started by your predecessor of visiting and talking to police officers. Talk to the police officers, don't talk at us, so that they can understand your role and your mandate, so that they don't feel you are after them. You're not after their necks. You are supporting us to that we can be able to make Kenya a better place for everybody. Thank you. I hope I've covered everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Commissioner. Maybe now I will call in Anne Makori, the chairperson of IPOA.
Thank you very much. I note there are a few areas that I need to address. I'll try to be brief. On the issue of sexual violence, I think Commissioner Kisavi has done justice to that particular issue. But what I wanted to note, and he has said it in his conclusion, is that not all sexual offense cases or rape cases during electioneering period are committed by the members of the service. Actually, majority of them are not members of the service. And because of the nature and the numbers involved, I'm aware that there was a task force that was established that was headed by Dorcas Udur. Unfortunately, I don't think she is present. The deputy director of public prosecutions. I don't think the office of ODPP is represented, but I know she headed a task force that was looking into this issue and made recommendations. And a lot of things came out from that report, which I would urge people to read. Among them, there were also false allegations of people who claimed to have been defiled, but when they tried to dig down into the evidence, they could not come out and prove. So this is an issue that requires continuous stakeholder engagement. This is an issue that requires a lot of public education. But then where culpability is established, then very stern measures should be taken. IPOA's mandate is only restricted to members of the National Police Service. So any cases that are committed by members of the civilians and the members of the public then falls within the DCI and the NPS, as it were. But either way, wherever culpability is established, I think one of the deterrents is to ensure that then the punishment meted out is appropriate to discourage such behavior. But in terms of polycare, in terms of gender desks, in terms of the interventions that Commissioner Kisavi has spoken into, this is true and this is happening, and we are working together because a lot of these have also been covered in the past through various IPOA recommendations. Who checks IPOA? We report to Parliament, the Committee on Administration and National Security. We also do periodic reports, half-yearly, that we submit to the Minister for Interior and Coordination of National Government, that being our ministry, where we get our policy direction from. And we also send reports through the Council of Governors to all county assemblies because they represent the people of this republic. Basically, the mandate we exercise is constitutional, and therefore we are accountable to the people of Kenya. And the only way we can be accountable is through their elected leaders at the county level, at the national level, and at the Senate level. At the Senate, we are oversighted by the Committee on Justice and Human Rights Committee of the Senate. And we are periodically called upon to account for various actions or inactions, as it were, by these committees. So that's where we report, and we are checked, and then we do, other than the periodic performance reports, we also do an annual report that is distributed accordingly again to the various parliamentary formations, county, national, Senate, and to the ministry. And we also share our reports with various other constitutional commissions because we are all have the responsibility of ensuring constitutional implementation. Somebody had asked about how we handle conflict with policing. Currently, we do not have very many areas of conflict, but there are still some outstanding areas. But what we've done, we are working in cooperation and collaboration with the service. And where we have divergent views, we are continuously engaging, particularly at the leadership level. And we've seen the relationship that has improved quite a lot. And we hope that we can continuously work towards strengthening this relationship for more effective and more responsive service delivery to the people of this republic. I've also had people comment about the welfare of the service. We are greatly concerned about the welfare. We've made various recommendations, a lot of which have been implemented. But we've also made one which I'm not sure has been implemented. We've made a recommendation to the Cabinet Secretary, the National Police Service Commission, and the Inspector General. And this recommendation is based on other provisions of Section 82, 84, and the 7th schedule of the National Police Service Act 2011. And the recommendation is that those particular institutions that we have mentioned should fast track the formation of police service associations so as to advance the welfare issues of the police officers and ensure equal treatment of the various deployed units. We are happy that the recommendation on psycho-support system is being implemented and very good progress is being made, but we still feel there is more that can be done to advance the welfare issues of the service if they can be given platforms through which they can highlight their issues. I take the challenge, Commissioner Kitavi, to visit the police stations. We had started very well. We visited very many. COVID came. We still tried to visit a number of police stations even during the COVID time. But I think it reached a time the situation was getting serious, so we scaled down. I can see the economy is reopening. You can be certain we shall re-engage. We shall go flat out and try and engage with the service so that we can also hear them. We are genuinely interested in hearing them and together working towards ensuring the issues that are of concern to the service are addressed. And we believe we are a fair platform that can raise these issues for and on behalf of the service so that we continuously, even as we put pressure on the service, we also address the areas that, that need to be enhanced. We fully acknowledge, and I'm on record on saying this, and I wish to be on record again saying that the work of the service is amazing. Let's put it that way. Today we are here, seated wherever we are seated in this country, enjoying the peace and the tranquility that exists in this country. This is as a result of the work of the service. I know many times people forget that they're able to do their businesses and move around in safety because somebody somewhere is working 24/7. That somebody are the members of the National Police Service. And therefore, wherever we are, let's encourage also the citizens to take responsibility to avoid instances where we have seen citizens attacking the service, because attacking the service would only lead to a state of anarchy. And we all have a responsibility to educate ourselves, the members of the public, and know that where there are rights and fundamental freedoms also comes duties and responsibilities. And the security of this country is our business, all of us. The prosperity of this country is a joint effort. Let's all work together to ensure that we have a more secure, a more freer, a more supportive environment. And I think having said that, as my closing remarks, thanks once again, ICJ, for this forum. These engagements are very critical.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner. We really appreciate your parting shot. And now for purposes of wrapping it up, I think I will give the rest of the panelists a minute each to give their parting shot. Then my colleague Silas will give closing remarks and thanking our participants. Maybe Commissioner Kisavi, kindly give us your parting shot.
Okay, thank you very much, Vincent. Maybe what I would like to say is that as a parting shot, I'm calling upon everybody, all people of goodwill, to support what the police service is doing to secure the country. And might be I would suggest that if somebody somewhere can think about initiating a talk to improve the integrity issues in this country. As the chair of IPOA said, most people are ready to lie just to fix a police officer. Can this be stopped by talking to the public and prevail upon all Kenyans of goodwill to always talk the truth, support the security because we are here for them. We are here, we are servants of the people. We are not their commanders, we are not their bosses. And with that, if everybody comes on board and they realize that the security of this country starts with each one of us, we'll have a better Kenya. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Arnold. You indicated that you will be leaving anytime soon. We thank you for holding. Please make your parting shot.
Yeah, thank you. Just to say thanks to ICJ Kenya for the important meeting and to thank in particular the institutions that are represented here that represent the election management bodies, if I can put it that way, that help Kenyans to have a voice and effective participation in elections. I really appreciate it because it doesn't happen in many countries that you find the election management body, the judiciary, the relevant members of parliament, as well as the police force, the police services involved in a civil society organized event. So I really think it speaks to the maturity of Kenyans in their democracy. So I congratulate you and really wish you the best in 2022. Over.
Thank you, Arnold. Thank you very much. And next, I will invite Honorable Gichana.
Thank you very much, ICJ. Thank you also our panelists for your very good discussions around this area. What I would say in parting short is that I request all Kenyans of goodwill to continue supporting our institutions and have faith in our institutions. None of the institutions or none of us are perfect, but we work best when we receive honest feedback that will help strengthen the democracy that Kenya is and also help support our country and the citizens in large. Let us have faith in the election management bodies, IEBC. Let us have faith in the judiciary. Let us have faith in the police. And where there are issues that need to be resolved, let us work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gichana. And finally, I will call in Mr. Kimanthi.
Thank you, Vincent. Just three issues. One is to thank ICJ Kenya for putting this together. And then in terms of our elections monitoring reports, I've put a link on the chat. Feel free to engage on the same. And then lastly, to say that as the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, we've already started our monitoring journey towards 2022 and beyond. We've already done our strategy, which we're in the process of publishing, and we are going to do a launch very soon, and we'll be disseminating so that all the actors can engage with us. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Auntie, and thank you very much for the panelists. And my parting shot is what I've got from the whole conversation is, maybe I will rephrase the slogan, together we stand, divided we fall. Over to you, Silas.
Thank you, Vincent, opportunity. This collaboration even within the institutions, I think all what we have come to agree is the fact that this conversation needs to be continued, not only at ICJ Kenya, but even within the bilateral conversations that we have amongst partners. Very important to mention is our readiness as ICJ Kenya to partner with institutions and deliberate on these issues ahead of the 2022 general elections, and to ensure that we are prepared, well prepared, and we support each and every institutions to carry their mandate as required by the Constitution of Kenya and as required by the people of the Republic. On behalf of the ICJ Kenya Council, the Secretariat, I extend my sincere gratitude to the panelists and the participants. Thank you to Commissioner Makori. Thank you to Mr. Dominic Kisavi. Thank you to Honorable Zipporah Gichana, Arnold Tsunga, and Lucas Kimanthi for finding time to join us in this very, very important conversations and deliberations ahead of our 2022 general elections. Finally, I extend my gratitude to all our participants for joining us today and for having a very active engagement, and for the entire production team and the technical team behind the curtains that have really given in a lot of effort to ensure that this event is a success. Until next time, allow us to engage to everyone. Please engage at ICJ Kenya, #elections 2022, at #credible-elections-KE, and #elections integrity. Until next time, asanteni and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye and thanks.